What's going on, everybody? This is Black Men Sundays, and I'm your host, Corie Sylvester Murray, and we're talking about generational wealth, finance, business, and of course, mental health.
It's a black man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
And on today's show, we're talking to Antonio Michael Down, and this brother's coming to us from Toronto, Canada. This brother's an author, he's a musician, he's a radio host, Antonio Michael Down. And like I said, he's joining Black Men Sundays. We're about to talk about identity, we're about to talk about culture, belonging. From his memoir, Saga Boy, to his novel, Black Cherokee, and his other works, including Molasses, and the children's book, Stars in My Crown. This brother has earned multiple literary nominations, including recognition for the Toronto Books Awards. And beyond the page, this brother also hosts the next chapter on CBC Radio with one of Canada's most respected book programs, where he sits down with top authors and cultural voices from around the world. And if that wasn't enough, this brother is a musician. He's released four albums under the alter ego John Orpheus. Jay, you ain't think I was gonna bring that up. And today we talking, like I said, we talking identity, we talking creativity, we talking culture, and what it really means to find your place in the world. So without further ado, Antonio Michael Downing out of Toronto, Canada, brother. Welcome to Black Men Sundays, man. How you doing?
Yo, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for that. I feel so decorated after hearing that intro. So thank you for having me. I can't wait. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, let's jump in, man. I'm excited. Like I told my engineer before we started the show, I was like, it's going to probably take me 2 minutes to get through this brother's intro. So let's jump right in, man. I want to talk about Black Cherokee off the top. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
impetus of the book and what experiences shaped that creation.
So Black Cherokee is a coming of age about a young girl who, just like the title of the book sounds, she's black and she's Cherokee, but both of those communities reject her. So the Cherokee people are like, "Why is your hair so curly?" The black people are like, "Why are you praying to the river?" And it's really about her figuring out how she should be in a world where the place that she's supposed to be tells her she don't belong. The impetus for the book was traveling throughout the South and the landscape of the South, but also the fact that the South's history was still alive and living in the present. And that really fascinated me, how things that happened long ago were still shaping the lives of the people today. And so Black Cherokee is really about how history, whether it be personal history, family history, local history, national history, never really dies and never really goes into the past. That's kind of the inspiration for the book, I would say.
No, I love that, man, because I remember when I was young, before I learned the real story, my mom always was like, we're black, we Cherokee Indian, we from New York, but we black Cherokees. I always look like, mom, my hair always looks different. Your hair looks different. People that know and see my mom. But then I really found out we weren't Cherokee at all. Like our grandfather's
Mhm.
actually Jewish. So, but why do so many people
Yeah.
struggle with identity and belonging in our community, though?
I think there's a couple things. I mean, first of all, it's Black Men Sunday, so I'm gonna keep it 100. I think that a lot of our lineages have been erased systematically and hidden, so it's hard to track back. Like, I know white folks who could trace their ancestry back almost 1,000 years, some of them. But I think that's really hard for black folks because they didn't really keep records. Our families were broken up. It wasn't important to track where we come from, and so as a result, I think that's a big piece of it because you feel disconnected from your past, from your roots. I think another part of it is just that, identity is an interesting thing, right? It's a construct. So it's like you might feel however you feel, but in the world, they expect you to make a choice. So, give you an example: black and white, right? You're supposed to choose which one of those get in where you fit in. But of course, we all know all you got to do is send in one of those DNA test things, and it's never just clearly black or white, is it? It's always like a spectrum and a bunch of things. And so I think it's hard because we are made up of many things, but in the world, we're forced to choose one thing. And I think that's why it's also complicated for us because our experience is at odds with what we're being asked to, how we're being asked to live.
But what's the
That makes
biggest misconception about black and the indigenous culture, you know?
Yeah, I think the black and indigenous culture is always interesting, right? Because if the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then black and indigenous people should always be getting along because a lot of the things that were used to persecute one were then flipped and used to persecute another. However, that's not the way it's always been. In fact, there's been a lot of Black Indigenous solidarity, but a lot of times there's conflict. So the history that Black Cherokee is based on is what we call the Black freedmen, the people we call the Black freedmen. And who they are people who were Black folks who were enslaved by the elite in the Cherokee and and Choctaw and Chickasaw and the Creek and the Seminole tribes, the five so-called civilized tribes, they had slaves. And then 200 years later, those slaves are emancipated. They're culturally Cherokee, but they're racially black. And so these people are still to this day fighting to get entrance as full citizens into those tribes, if you believe that. Only one of those tribes has let them in, and that's the Cherokee, and they did it in 2019. So they did it like, a couple years ago, really. So I think part of the thing is that, when you talk about two, like the great foundational sins, the first sins of America were enslaving black people and killing indigenous people and taking their land. And I think because both communities are persecuted, there's almost a kind of there's a lot of reasons for it, but there's a lot of conflict. When in actuality, if you ask me, there should be a lot of cooperation. But that's kind of the nature of it. And I think when you're persecuted in that way, and then you find someone else that you can persecute, you kind of just pass it on. You know how sometimes the people who are the nastiest are the people who themselves were treated poorly? And so I feel like a lot of times that's how both ways. Like there's black folks who are hostile to indigenous people, and the other way as well. And so I feel like from where I come from, I feel like they, like I said, they're often pitting us against each other, and I feel like actually we're better off as friends, as allies. So that's my take on it.
Gotcha, man. And you know, on Black Men Sundays, a lot of brothers that we have on our show outside of financial advisors, outside of accountants, a lot of people are authors on the show. So, at
Hmm.
what point did you think that storytelling is powerful, especially for Black men today?
Stories are like elegant pieces of information delivery software, right? They are these elegant pieces of narrative that when something is important, we can code that info into a story. And by sharing the story, that's how we share the information and that's how we pass it on. It's super important for Black people because in our history, back to Africa, there were griots, and griots were like the historians, the cultural custodians of the community. And I feel like that's lived on in everybody from like someone like Tupac, for example, just telling, Dear Mama, if you know that song. That's a that's telling our story and that's passing on crucial information. And I have a tech background, right? I worked in finance as well, so I understand that part of your vibe. I worked in corporate sales, and part of all corporate sales is just telling the story of the product in a way that makes the customer purchase that. And I got to a point where I'd become pretty good at telling stories in that setting. And it occurred to me that I could be a lot more useful if I shifted over to telling stories in a cultural setting because because someone has to. You know what I mean? It's like that's the value. And here's the thing. What I would say is we can all earn money. We know we got to earn money. We know we got to make things happen. We know we got to do our thing. We got to shine. The big question is why. And I think stories connect us to our why, right? Where do we come from? What are our roots? Why do we need to preserve? Why are we building? What are we building for? Who are we leaving it to? Who did we get it from? I think answering those big questions is key to mental health. It's key to staying motivated, it's key to staying focused, and it's also key to being effective in whatever you choose to do in your life, even if it has nothing to do with culture or storytelling. Knowing it's almost like a tree, right? The stories are the roots of the tree, and a tree without roots will just blow over in the storm. And so I think it's a crucial function, especially for Black people, because again, a lot of our past is obscured or erased, or literally right now people are taking books out of libraries that have any reference to our history, right? And so a people without history is not a people at all. So that's why I think the storytelling is crucial.
So if you could give one piece of advice to young black men searching for purpose, what would it be?
Understand your history, because again, history are roots and history is context. And so the more you know the stories that form you and form who you are and the legacies and lineages that you stand in, then the more powerfully you're going to stand in them. And you can do that by talking to the elders in your community, talking to old folks in your community. They have the stories of where you came from. I'm a big book guy, so obviously reading books, reading histories. There are a lot of there's so many brilliant books out there. Um, but connect with your story, connect with your history. I think that's the key to understanding, sort of getting a narrative of who you are, why you're here, and what is it that you're trying to do. I feel like that's the big piece that I think many of us are missing.
Great information, man. Our shows, Black Men Sundays, we deal with generational wealth. And, with your corporate sales background, we're trying to build wealth. So, what wealth building techniques are you utilizing? Are you investing in stocks? Do you have any IRAs? Do you do any crypto? Like, what type of wealth building techniques are you utilizing these days?
Me personally, I'm big on stocks. I'm big on the stocks and bonds market. So um, I find that it is the best gain with the least risk. And so I've invested for quite a long time. I kind of think the Warren Buffett approach. So number one, invest in what you know, like invest in the businesses that are part of your life already. I worked in tech, so I have a pretty good knowledge of that field. So that's where I put a lot of my funds, but also understand how you can do balance it, understand how stocks and bonds can balance each other. And always be reading, always be reading and always be studying and always be attentive to what's happening in the world and how it interacts with your investments. That's where I primarily put my stuff. I have owned property in the past, but you know I my vibe is I like to travel light, and I like to have my brain space for creative work. And so I don't want to be worrying about a roof that might cave in or a water heater needs to be, refreshed. I find sometimes for me it's easier to own stock and understand that place. And yeah, so that's my big space that I focus on. But I've never bought crypto, although I track quite a few crypto companies. Like I'm always tracking more companies that I'm investing in, because, part of investing wisely is understanding what's a good price. And so part of understanding what a good price is to track the companies long before you invest in them, and wait for the opportunities. So I track crypto companies, but I've never bought in. And I track actually, seven or eight verticals, like industries. I'll track them. I'll follow the companies. I'll read their earnings reports. But I might not invest in them maybe ever. But I'm always learning by studying where they're at.
And that's great information, especially speaking to a brother, coming from Toronto, which, you're in a different country. So, with Trump being the president, especially looking at the US market, looking at the war with Iran, I mean, does that affect your investing strategy being that you're in Toronto?
Yeah, well, Canada is very integrated with the US securities markets, right? So we pretty much we have access to what you have access to, and pretty much we move in flux with what you do. The war in Iran, I mean, it's obviously a super unpredictable situation. Um, I don't invest in oil or gas, and so I think really those are the big companies being affected. But also, it's a general. I think the effect of it so far, and we're only about 2 weeks into it, so it could end tomorrow for all we know. Yeah, and so I feel like it's so general and it's so new that right now we don't know how that's going to affect things just yet. So, I mean, unless you're directly in oil and gas or defense, the smart move I think is to wait and see how it's going to play out. If you are directly in those industries, then I would be, make sure you're tracking your companies, make sure you're understanding the geopolitical, and the ways it'll play out. I mean, if you're in oil and gas, if I track a couple companies in oil and gas, and it's like, yo, you're gonna make. It's clear that the price of oil is going to be high for the next year at least off of this. Defense companies, there's winners and losers, but yeah, it's hard to know, right? It's super unpredictable. I don't even know. I mean, does Donald Trump even know what he's going to do tomorrow? I don't know. I certainly don't.
I got you, man. Well, I appreciate that, man. Well, all right, fellas, the stage is open. Say your name and the city and state you're representing. Let's go.
Hey, how you doing, man? This is Kalali Dobe out of Calvert County, Maryland. First question I wanted to ask you is, we talked a lot about, kind of just like existential questions, these questions of why you do what you do, and I find that really interesting and fascinating. So, if I can ask you, how did you find your why?
I would say being a creative person is a huge reason of how I found it. Like, I spend a lot of time writing songs, singing songs, writing poems, writing stories, and that's a real big part of it for me, like creative expression. Because I think there are a lot of things in your subconscious that come out from that. But really, my grounding is in the people that I like. My book Saga Boy, when I started to write it, was really about finding my why. It was exactly about that. And
Mm,
I realized to discover my why, I had to understand my parents and their lives, and then I had to understand my grandparents and their lives, and then I was like, well, why are these West African people in a little island off of South America, Trinidad, which is where I grew up till I was 11, and so I
mm-hmm.
had to go back and back and back. And I think the more I understood sort of where I came from, the more I had a stronger sense of why I was here. And certainly I was good at certain things from an early age. And so I leaned into them. I felt like the things that I was gifted at, so reading, anything to do with words, singing, I just leaned really hard into them, and I found that I they gave back a lot of lessons about what I could do, what was possible. They made me confident, that I could actually pursue things. And I think that was a big thing. So I would say number one, creativity. Number two, being rooted in your history of your family and where you came from. And number three, lean into the things that are your gifts. Like, not we all have things we're good at that we're better at than others. It's like if you love it, do it a lot. Like, lean into it, become elite at it, and the lessons it will teach you about yourself will allow you to become elite at anything, is what I found. Those skills are very transferable.
No, that's a great answer. Like, it's just interesting because it reminds me of, how people always say, do the thing that you'll do for free, and that's what's going to actually give you the most financial success. You know what I mean? And so,
Mhm.
and it's all
Yeah.
tied in talking about with your why. You know what I mean? If you find that, then that's where you find your real success at.
So much of our success in human relations come down to energy, right?
Mm.
Because if you ever seen someone choose a career path because it makes a lot of money, but it doesn't suit them, and those people are always miserable, right? And so they're always miserable. And then you see someone choose a career path that isn't supposed to make them money, and somehow they're making money at it.
Mhm.
And so what I learned was, if you choose something that lights you up energetically and that you're passionate about, or as you put it, something you would do for free, if money wasn't an object, what you find is you do it longer. It's easier to get through difficult things. You do it more. You enjoy it more. So next thing you know, over time, you've spent more time and had more reps doing that thing than someone else that's just doing it because they are trying to get some kind of advantage. And so you end up being better. Because the truth is, if you can be in the top 10% in almost any field, you will make money, right? And so really, how do you get to the top 10%? Well, A, it's got to be something you have some kind of facility at, natural facility. And B, you've got to do it a lot. You've got to get a lot of reps in. And if doing it is something that you don't like, that you don't enjoy, then you're never going to get enough reps to become elite. And I feel this in writing all the time. We have this saying in writing where we say people don't want to write, they want to have written. You know what I mean? Like, so they all they all want to be like, oh, I want all the prestige and all the money and the book tour of having written, but actual writing is hard. I happen to love it, but if you don't love it and you're just trying to get that prestige, I mean, God bless you. It's not going to work out for you too good. So yeah, like, do things because they matter to you, because they move you, because they give you more energy than they take. The only reason to do anything is because you are passionate about it. People doing stuff just for money are always sad and miserable, and at the end of the day, it's not worth it, because we've all seen the people who retire with a bunch of money and then die within 5 years
Mm.
because
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they made because they made themselves sick
yeah,
because they
yeah.
spent most of their life being miserable, right? So don't do that to yourself.
No, that's a great message. That's a great message. That's interesting because what you said about writing hit home for me. Like I like to write, but like I can never finish a book. So I'm gonna ask you, how do you finish a book?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize I was hitting home with that one. It's so
Yeah,
funny.
man.
There's a saying where a writer, Margaret Atwood, the woman who wrote The Handmaid's Tale, she's a
Yeah.
Canadian, a great Canadian writer, and she was at a party once, and a neuroscientist, a brain surgeon, came up to her and said, when I retire, I'd like to write. I'm gonna write. And she said to him, yeah, when I retire, I'm gonna do brain surgery. So The point being,
Yeah, yeah, I get,
it's
yeah.
it's a serious vocation. You got to take it seriously. I mean, my brother, I'm happy to help you with that. I get called to guest lecture about this a lot. It depends on what your blocks are for finishing, right? Like, so there can be lots of things preventing you from finishing. Generally, writers fall into two categories. They call them pantsers or planners. So a pantser is like fly by the seat of your pants. Like,
Got
so
it.
there's someone, they don't plan, they just jump in. And then you have planners who will plan everything meticulously, and they won't write the first sentence until they know what the last sentence is. Right? So, and we all know those people in our lives, right? There's people who plan everything, and there's people who, are all game, no plan, right? So which one are you? Which one are you though, first of all?
I would categorize myself as the planner, especially when it comes to writing, because like when I get I get several ideas for concepts that I like to write. And so what I'll do is I'll work on a concept, but I don't really feel comfortable writing it until I know how it's going to end. So,
Okay.
so that becomes a block for me sometimes because I don't complete the concept because I'm like, well, I don't know how it's going to end. So I'm stuck. You know what I mean? And I don't know. That's always been like the best things I have is more like recording than writing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, so I understand. So would you consider, so I feel like a planner, the benefit of a plan is you have everything laid out and so there's no surprises. The downside of a planner is you're scared to go forward until you have the plan fully built out. and
Yeah.
and sometimes in life we figure out what the right thing to do is and then we go do it. Sometimes, a lot of times, we go do it and
Yeah.
then we figure out what the right thing is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I would suggest that your block is probably that you're too, like you said it yourself, right? When I don't have a plan, I don't feel I can do it. The truth
Yeah.
is, if you started doing it, you would probably discover what the right way to end it is along the way. And so
Mm.
sometimes you've got to, fortune favors the brave, brother. Sometimes you got to kind of,
Real.
yeah, sometimes you got to be like, and this is life, right? Sometimes in
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
you don't
It's
know what's
real.
going to happen. I don't
Yeah.
know what the Black Men Sunday are gonna ask me, but I'm gonna show up and see what happens, right? I'm gonna navigate. So
Yeah.
my suggestion for you in your case is practice the art of leaping before you look,
Mhm.
and go in, because here's the thing, the wastebasket is your friend, right? Like, you can just delete that. The delete button's your buddy, right? So it's not like if you make a mistake everyone's gonna know. Nobody's gonna know. You can just go,
Real.
I don't like it, delete, right? It's a
True.
two-way door. Like Jeff
True. True.
Bezos talks about one-way door, two-way doors, right? One-way door, if you go through it you can't come back. That's like having a baby, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Life
with
decisions.
writing, almost everything's a two-way door. You can jump in, figure it out, screw it up, take all kinds of risks, and walk back through it, and nobody even knows,
Mm.
right? So I would encourage you to embrace that, because probably your block is you're good at planning, and but sometimes planning gets in the way, because when you can't see the end, you're too afraid to proceed without a plan.
No, I appreciate that, man. That's actually, yeah, that's good advice. That's good life advice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
good life.
I like to think that we are all writers of our own movie that we're walking through. Like, we are starring and writing and directing our own movie. And so everything that's good advice for writing is good advice for
You grew up in Trinidad since you were 11. You know,
life. Hmm.
um, have West African heritage. I also have West African heritage. My parents are from Ghana. Um, and then they came over and immigrated to the United States. And I was born in the United States, and I've been here the whole time. Um, if you wouldn't mind, there's been a lot of discussion, I would say, over the past 5 years, about where, the African diaspora is. Do you have any thoughts on that? About um, the unity of the African diaspora or the disunity of it, or, what's going on in terms of I would say, advocacy for different identities and things like that within the, if you want to call it, African American or Black identity structure?
Wow, that's a
I
whole
told you it was a
man.
difficult.
That's a I mean, I don't think it's difficult, but it's difficult to answer in a short format. But yeah, like I have lots of thoughts about that because was born in Latin America. I
Uh
grew
huh.
up in the Caribbean.
Uh huh.
I moved to North America and in Canada, and I've lived for and worked a long time in the US, and a lot of my friends are from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what it is that we do not take the time to really understand each other before we speak on each other's lives. So I'm sure you've heard this. A lot of African folks, for example, will come to America and they'll say, these people, my bad Nigerian accent, they'll be like, these people have been living in the richest country in the world for hundreds of years and they are still poor. They must be lazy, right? Because in West Africa, you don't the whole power structure is black, so they don't understand Jim Crow, redlining, like gerrymandering. They don't understand any of those things, but they feel that they can comment on how black Africans who actually, you know suffered to give the freedom that those African folks, when they come to America, have. And I always say to them, I said, look, if I landed in Lagos and I was like, oh man, these people have been independent from the British for 60 years and they still have blackouts and can't keep the lights on and there's still corruption and all of this, these people must be stupid. What would you say? And they would say, well, you don't understand colonialism. You don't understand the Biafran War. You know what I mean? You don't understand our history. You don't have a right to say that. And so, what I see is everybody needs to take time to understand each other's history. And the reason you should do it is because, if you're a black person, do you honestly think white people are distinguishing between us? The truth is, not at all. They just see a black person, and if they're prejudiced, they're not going to say, well, this one's African, he's better, or that one is Caribbean, he's better. We are all black, and we come from a shared history. Most of the slaves came from West Africa. Most of them, like the Caribbean had just as much slavery as the US did. Many Caribbean people have contributed to Black American life and American history. Harry Belafonte, who funded Martin Luther King Jr. when he was doing the freedom marches in Selma. Sidney Poitier, first black man to win an Oscar. Colin Powell, first black man to run the U.S. military. Like all these people are Caribbean people, right? So Caribbean people are integrated. We're all integrated and we're all on the same team. And I always feel really sad when I see, people arguing with each other or looking down on each other. Because to me, there's only one person that wins in that, and it's not any of us. And so, personally, I just feel people need to slow down, listen, ask good questions, and maybe every now and then read a book about where other people come from, other Black people, because it's all related, is what you will find. If you go back far enough, we are all from the same, we all have the same dynamic. And if you go forward, we will be treated the same. when we walk into those rooms, when we go for that job. If you try to get into that country club, we're all going to be treated the same. And so we should respect and learn about each other rather than fight each other. That's my take on it. I hope that wasn't too long.
Nah, nah, that was outstanding, man. That was really awesome. I appreciate that. You talked about the classic indigenous tribes. Would you mind just
Hmm.
telling the five which ones are the five classic indigenous
Yeah.
tribes?
So they were called the five civilized tribes,
Oh, it's
be,
civilized. Okay.
by white folks. It's a controversial title. That's why I put up the air quotes. Um, and if you're keeping slaves, you got to wonder how civilized. That's not a civilized behavior. So it's a very, it's a very demeaning term, I think. But that's how they identify, and that's the and these are were in the southeast at the time that Europeans landed in North America on the continent, and they're the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Creek, the Seminole, and the largest one, which is the Cherokee. And they're
Okay.
also the tribes that moved from, like, in 1832 when Andrew Jackson dropped the Indian Removal Act. Basically, that act was designed to push all of them, make it illegal for them to be in the Southeast because they wanted to claim all of that land, and they had to migrate to where they live to this day in, like, out west in Oklahoma. And that's the that migration where they had to walk thousands of miles. That's called the Trail of Tears, and many of them died on that trip. And so those are the tribes that I'm talking about. And the Black freedmen are descendants of formerly enslaved people who were enslaved by these tribes.
Thank you very much, man. That's great information. Like I said, thanks for spending some time. Thanks for allowing me to pick your brain a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to Corey.
Yeah, man. Hey, man. So I was gonna say, brother, you enjoying yourself on Black Men Sundays? Antonio Michael Downing out of Toronto, Canada, brother.
Yes, sir. It's dope, man. It's first of all dope to speak with black folks, and it's kind of different when we're in the room, right? When it's our room, it just feels a lot more comfortable, and we can talk in a way and go to places that I couldn't otherwise. And so I speak to all kinds of rooms, but it's always beautiful to be with black folks, especially on a Sunday. It's such a blessed day. We're not hurried. It's not a rush. It's a beautiful space. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that, man. And last week we had my brother, Dr. Herbert Harris, who's an author, public speaker, retired attorney, was one of the first brothers to go to Cornell University. So, I asked him
Mm.
as an author, and I'm gonna ask you, Kalali alluded to it, but I already had it in my notes. What's your perspective on AI as for writing? Because his point of view was just write it yourself, and then on the back end, it's just easier for the AI to kind of critique it versus having the AI write it for you up front. And now it doesn't sound like now you're kind of rewriting it. So, what's your take on AI? Do you believe in it? Are you using it? And how are you using it?
Yeah, it's fascinating topic, first of all, and really obviously relevant to our times. Personally, I feel AI is here, and I read a lot of the internal papers that they have at Google and Microsoft and Nvidia, and the stuff that's coming is going to blow everything that exists out of the water. I don't know if we can fight it. What I would like it to be is for it to be a tool. A tool can either you can use a tool or a tool can use you. And I feel like if you don't understand how to do the thing you're trying to do, and you just let the AI do it, you can't critique whether it's doing it right or wrong. And like, one of the main places AI is having an impact is software development. Coders don't even code anymore. They just set the prompt, and they go for lunch and come back, and the code's there and it's tested and whatnot. But here's the key piece: they know enough so they can go into the code and say whether the code is written right or not written right. The problem with letting AI do your writing for you is is that you need to be able to write to actually be able to critique the writing of an AI engine. They make mistakes, they're inaccurate, they make up stuff, like there's still a lot of glitches with it. If you're and second of all, it's not going to sound like you. You won't have a style. I write fiction, so maybe style is more important to me than others. But here's my take on it. When you write, you think about the cognitive process of writing. So first of all, I've got to think out clearly what it is I want to say. Then I got to write it and I got to figure out what is the best way to say it. I got to rearrange the sentence, maybe cross it out, write it again. And I've got to finally coherently assemble that text. Now, all of those are some heavy duty computing skills that I'm doing in my brain. When you have a thought, the thought comes to you, whether it's I'm hungry or that book was silly or I love Black Man Sunday, right? Your thought comes to you in language. And so my point is this, when you outsource writing, you are actually outsourcing thinking. And so what's going to happen over time is those cognitive skill pathways that are going to atrophy. They're going to be like a muscle you don't use anymore. It's going to get weak. And that's kind of my issue with using AI for writing. I don't mind using AI for editing, but I think using it for writing really makes you not just a worse writer, but it actually makes you a worse thinker. And that's what my biggest worry is with using AI for writing. I I don't use AI a lot in my writing practice. I enjoy writing, like, and I enjoy that hard think through work of writing and coming up with it. I enjoy, I'm a fiction writer, so a lot of what I do is about style, not just substance. Substance is what I write, but style is how I write it. In any art form, I think style is crucial. And so, what I would say is, for me, it's really important that I do it myself. For people in general, I think it will make you a much better thinker to write it yourself because the idea of clarity and organizing thoughts and being coherent, if you stop practicing doing that, you're going to have a real problem. And then you can get AI to write it for you, but now you don't even know if it's coherent. You don't even know, is it on point, because you've lost the ability to do that. And so I would say probably the best place to use AI in writing is in an editing process, in a tightening process, like if you've already produced something. But if it's producing it and you don't understand how it's done what it's done, it's going to be really hard for you to say, is it good? Is it bad? Is it sloppy? Is it accurate? Is it complete? Does it make sense? I don't know. I forgot how to write because I stopped doing that, years ago. So that's my take on it. Like, use the tool, don't let the tool use you. Is what
Mm.
in a sentence, that's how I'd say it.
No, that's great information because when I talk to a lot of professionals that use AI, I speak to a lot of millennials, I speak to a lot of people, from my generation and and before that, and it just seems to me that it makes more sense to write it yourself. And then if you need some editing, that's where the AI is more friendly to you versus, you're not, you don't have the stylistic approach to write it yourself. But that's why, that's why I'm glad I'm from the decades and generations that I'm from because we didn't have all this. We had to sit there and do it ourselves, whether it was on a computer, whether we were on a keyboard, or we were using a piece of paper writing in cursive that a lot of these kids don't even know how to do these days. So I appreciate that,
Eh,
man. Yeah, man, you was gonna say something?
yeah, I was gonna say, on that note, you know what I do? I handwrite all my first drafts, like pen, paper, start to finish, 100,000 words, 80,000 words. I'll handwrite it because I just connect with that cognitive process so much. So I definitely feel you being from that generation that can do that even.
Yeah, for sure. Because like I said, for me nowadays, it takes less time because now I can just say, okay, this is what I want to write. I may not write it perfectly like for a social media post. Like if I'm gonna present Antonio Michael Downing on Black Men Sundays for social media, I could just type a quick synopsis of our conversation that we just had. It may not be the best, may not be the worst, but I can get it cleaned up and to where I want. So let's keep this conversation going because I don't want to hold you too much longer. It's already been an hour. So like I said in the intro, you also host the next chapter on CBC Radio, one of Canada's most respected book programs. Let's talk about that, and let's talk about how that's impactful to keep you writing.
Hmm. Yeah, most def. So I mean, first I'll explain a little bit what CBC is. So CBC is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's a national broadcaster. So it's like a cross between like PBS, but it's like, it's like ABC News, but with a more PBS kind of
Mm,
so it's big media, it's TV stations, all everything gets covered. And then the radio aspect of it is pretty much the only radio station you can get anywhere in Canada that you go. You can get CBC. So, it's millions of people listening every week. The show comes out twice a week. The show's existed for a while, for about 20 years. My predecessor in the show, just to give you context, won the Order of Canada, which is like the Congressional Medal of Honor. It's like the highest award a civilian can win in Canada. So a lot of folks listen in. A lot of folks trust the show for book recommendations, for the hot trends in literature, for checking out their old classics. I would call it a celebration of reading. Like it's not like I'm gonna get one author on for the whole show and talk about one book. I'm gonna get an author on there and I'm gonna ask him, hey, what are the books that formed who you are as a human being? And what are the key books at the key points in your life that shape you? So in that way, it's a celebration of reading. How has it changed me or affected me as a writer? I would say number one, I read a lot of genres that I normally would never read. Right? There's a lot of things I would normally read, but I'm reading it because it's research and it's part of the show. And I think that's dope because it's given me a great appreciation of other genres. It's also allowed me to appreciate the things that readers love universally, right? Like, regardless of genre, readers love a great character they can relate to. Readers love a story that keeps them locked in, right? Readers love a great plot. Now, some more than others, but it really locks me into the things that readers fundamentally, whatever style they read, they enjoy in their fiction. It also lets me know, like, being able to sit in like a newsroom with a bunch of producers and decide what book are we gonna cover, what artists are we gonna cover. It really hips me to what the media is looking for when they have an author in a book, right? How do they decide who they talk to? And yeah, all of these things I feel really help me a ton in my own writing because, yeah, I just feel I'm more dialed in. But the biggest thing is just celebrating reading as a transformative act because my life was shaped by books that I read, and reading continues to shape people's lives across Canada, across America, across the globe. So, and by the way, you can get the next chapter anywhere you get podcasts as well, right? It's the show goes out on the radio at a certain time every week, twice a week, but you can also just download it as a podcast and listen to it. So, yeah, I think it's a great show if you love reading and if you're always looking for books and recommendations. I think it's a great show for that.
Great information, man. I definitely appreciate all your information because, like I said, Black Men Sundays. This is our 181st show
Woo.
out of 181 shows. 170 are all authors. So
Wow.
it's just to hear different perspectives on writing, AI, and things of that sort. But before I let you get out of here, man, I want to turn you into John Orpheus for a minute, man. You got a second for that? Let's go,
Yo,
man. I mean, you're
let
only
me
four
get the
albums in. Let's go, man. Let's get it. But what I wanted to ask you about that is, I mean, 4 albums, Alter Ego John Orpheus. Let's just talk about that. I mean, you're an author. I mean, this brother has a children's book, Stars in My Crown. How do you navigate the different flavors, or is that just your personality that you're just kind of pinning down? Let's just have that conversation.
Yeah, I would say, man, I'm like the rainforest, right? It's always growing. Like the mango tree doesn't say we had mango last year, no mango this year. It's always producing, and that's how I feel. Like that's just the pulse of how I roll. I would say what stays the same across anything I do. The next chapter, John Orpheus. My novels are storytelling. I'm always trying to engage with stories and really and characters and this is kind of what my base level skill is. John Orpheus is like, at the beginning of Saga Boy, my memoir, I quote this writer Oscar Wilde. I say, he said, "Give him a mask and he'll tell you the truth." And I really understand that as meaning, I come from Trinidad, but we've been to Mardi Gras, these festivals, and in Trinidad is known for Carnival, which is just like Mardi Gras, but a whole country. And everybody dresses up to hide their faces and they look different, but that allows them to behave in ways that are part of them, but otherwise couldn't be expressed. And so I feel like John Orpheus as a character is almost like Antonio Michael is Clark Kent and John Orpheus is Superman. He has none of my limitations. And therefore it allows me to access a part of myself that's bolder, that's more swag, that's more kinetic, more in the moment. You know what I mean? Like that's how John Orpheus works for me. And so I really enjoy it as a persona. I enjoy him as a persona because he's fun. When I started doing John Orpheus, my friends would laugh at me. They'd call me and go, "Hey, yo, can John come and hang tonight? Yeah, we want John to come out and hang." Right? Like they would just be, he's fun, he's in the moment, he dresses like drippy, he's always in some swag, he's always on some looking good, and he's always switched on, bringing that instant energy, and I love that. I love that. I love that I have that part of myself that can live on. But like I said, fundamentally, it's all storytelling. John Orpheus songs are all about characters going through stuff, emerging, learning, growing, characters, energy channeled through storytelling.
Yeah, man, that's great information. And for brothers that want to connect with you on social media, they want to check the books out, they want to listen to you. How can we connect with you on social media, books, any outlets?
Yeah, I mean, my books are available Saga Boy or Black Cherokee. You can look them up. They're available in any of your big bookstores, even your small community bookstores. You can order them. They're on Simon and Schuster and Milkweed Editions. Um, on social media, I'm on everything, but I spend most of my time on Instagram, and that's at Antonio Michael Downing. Uh, you can find my book, Saga Boy and Black Cherokee, online, Amazon, any of your favorite bookstores. And for music, for John Orpheus music, it's you can find me anywhere you stream music, Apple Music, Spotify. It's John John. last name Orpheus, Orpheus. Check it out. If you want to holler at me directly, hit me up on Instagram. Send me a DM.
All right, cool. Well, there we have it, man. Antonio Michael Downing coming out of TO, Toronto, Canada. Your alter ego, John Orpheus. I love all of that. I would love to see you fresh to death in the Orpheus logos and the clothes. I would love to see what that looks like. You know what I'm saying? But I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate your time, my brother, spending with us on
Yeah,
Black Men Sundays. And holla at you and enjoy the rest of your day, brother. Peace. And stay warm in Toronto.
yeah, man. I appreciate y'all. Stay up, Black Man Sundays.
It's a black man Sunday.